Thank you. First off, thanks Sonia, Ori, Nathan, everybody at the amazing organization at AWE. Kudos for another fine year. Always the just pivotal XR conference. And it's an honor to be here. My name's Finn. I'm the CEO of Chicken Waffle, and this talk came together trying to focus on, with all the different technology coming and some being seen as dev kits, some seen as turning the existing content into legacy, I felt that was a really cool topic to discuss of how do you build content that doesn't become legacy as the hardware evolves. And so with me here, I have a couple of really amazing superstars. Nicole and Josette. Please, Nicole, would you please introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you do?
All right, well, Nicole Lazzaro here from Zio Design, and for those of you I haven't met, I have worked in games for the past 30 years. Among other things, I designed the first iPhone game back in 2007 with Joe Hewitt, and I'm known also for the 4 Keys to Fun, so I analyze people's faces while they played games. I have a consulting company, which is how we earn our revenue, so we do a lot of consulting both in games and non-games. Worked on franchises such as, you may have heard of, such as The Sims and Star Wars and Myst, those sort of things. And these days I'm also developing a original game for XR called Follow the White Rabbit. So we, back in February, we soft launched on Apple Vision Pro. And we'll be officially launching episode 1 in a month or so. That's awesome. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Josette Seitz, currently with Specular Theory, so I'm doing flight simulations for the US Air Force, which is insane, by the way, and I can't wait to talk about it. The other side of me is I'm getting into the tech art space and seeing where does XR fit with art today, whether it is NFTs or just your everyday artists on the streets making murals that are incredible, and how are we bringing that to life? So kind of doing a mixture of different things within XR. It's been amazing. Nicole, here's my story for you I wanted to bring up is we actually met at VRLA in 2018, and you didn't have a booth or anything, and you had Follow the White Rabbit with you, and I mean, this is before Oculus Go came out, so I'm not quite sure which headset it was that you had me in, and you were just exploring the expo floor and just saying hey everyone, look at my awesome game. And I was one of them. And I was living in North Carolina at the time, trying to figure out, is XR my future, my passion, my purpose? And you made such a huge impact on me, because as soon as I got out of your experience, I went back to North Carolina and I was like, I want to be her one day. And it's crazy because 6 years later, now we are here on a panel together where, I have Alice in the Gardens, which is an AR immersive storytelling experience, and you have Follow the White Rabbit, that's for Apple Vision Pro. So, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for all your inspiration, and it's been just an honor to be next to you today.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Very sweet.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am humbled to be in both of your presence. I had reached out to them as we were forming this panel, and as with Sonia on the panel, I said, maybe you don't hear it enough from average white guy in tech, but not just as inspirations to other women and people not of average white guys in tech, to show that you're opening doors for them, but you're an inspiration to me as well. I see y'all both pushing the envelope, killing it on social media, pushing the production, just really showing up to events and demoing your content and really growing your teams there, and that's kudos to that. It's not an easy thing to do, and y'all are really doing a great job.
I think the secret to that, you want to know the secret?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Is mastering the art of keep showing up.
Keep showing up. Don't stay home.
Yeah.
My background is diverse. I didn't start in games. I was U.S. Army, and then went into biology, and then a whole bunch of other fields, and animation, and then video games, and worked for Richard Garriott for years and built some really cool content, and then co-founded The Wave XR, if you ever heard of his virtual reality music performance experience.
That's real quick, Finn. That's actually how I got into more of the tech art space today, is I always remember things from what used to be called the Wave VR. Now they're just called the Wave. And just to see music, art, and technology, and when they were Wave VR, it was the best thing personally I've ever seen.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, incredible.
A lot of work went into that. I was working full-time at Portalarium and then full-time, if not overtime, on Wave. So I was doing about 140 hours a week for about a year and a half with no vacation or anything. So it was extensive amounts of work, but it was really cool and very rewarding to build really neat immersive content. And then with Ready Player One, brokering with Warner Brothers and stuff, I was able to liaison that into building some really cool content with HTC and forming Chicken Waffle. And so we worked really hard on a Dungeons and Dragons game that ended up fizzling out because the license was lost. And if you notice, Dungeons and Dragons wasn't in the movie, and so neither was our game. And so we kind of shifted gears and pushed around, ended up doing a lot of work for hire early on in Chicken Waffle, picking up a lot of B2B, enterprise, DoD training things, as well as making our own immersive content. Won an Emmy for digital innovation and for Red Bull, and just did a bunch of other South by Southwest awards and stuff with these really cool B2B content projects that were maybe 2 weeks, 1 month long, and big sack of money at the end, which was cool. But it ended up being like, we wanted to take to that next level, but we couldn't because the deadline already passed. And now that it exists, but it kind of exists as a video, right? And it's in the past. And so we really like to double down on our own games. So we released Baby Hands, which is a virtual reality baby simulation. If you haven't seen it, it's a zany little crazy game that's at like 1.3 billion gameplay views. And that was one of those games that we tried to build it in a way that it won't get old, right? Like no matter what the technology does, it will be relevant. And that was, again, kind of where we've been pushing forward. Now, fast forward to the future, we are ramping up Chicken Waffle Publishing to partner with other third-party studios, and we have 5 different studios, XR studios in partnership now, and so it's been pretty cool. But focusing on where we are as an industry, where we are as a developer base, most of y'all are likely developers, the people that fixes the printer in your family. As designers, what can we do? And I could just kind of take it. What can we do to form a groundwork to lay the design for the future of XR, would you say? Like as we see the future of XR growing, where it's going to go, what can we do now to prepare ourselves, to prepare our teams even, and ourselves, would you say?
I mean, we need to keep solving the problem. I think that's the first thing where it's like, how do we design? Well, who's our audience? What's the problem? And if there's not a problem, how are we elevating what's already out there? So, I mean, I think we're doing a good job, you guys. I just think we need to keep pushing and, the cliche of like not giving up, collaboration, and then really studying software. If you are a software developer, if you're more on the hardware side, keep studying that hardware side. Never forget where you're coming from. So, I mean, I think it just dates back to like, we need to solve something and like just keep going with that. I think we're doing a good job, but we just need to keep going. I don't know, Nicole, you've been at it longer than me though. Not to age you or anything, like, oh
Hey,
my God, that was the worst.
These wings, I'm going into the Hall of Fame, I guess. These wings
Yes.
are earned, so yeah, I have no problem with that.
And congratulations, you guys. Like, that was the first thing I saw on the red carpet was your name, and it's like.
Yeah, people can step on me now. That's rather fun. I don't know if you tried it, but I need to do an AR experience. Well, what I see, with a historical lens, my first VR projects were in 1992. If you remember, anyone remember QuickTime VR? You were making QuickTime VR. There were these bubbles, video bubbles that you could navigate through. We did virtual museums and all kinds of crazy interactive. I wanted to do interactive narratives, so that's what I was focused on. But I think it's important to remember that we're really in the third wave of VR. Believe it or not. First wave was Evan Sutherland and his work in the Sensorama. That was in the 1965, 68. The second wave was more in the early 90s with Jérôme Lanier, Brenda Laurel, Jackie Moret, that era, and then now fast forward today. So why I joined this panel is like, how are we going to build that future? What is the fourth wave of VR going to look like, and what kinds of preconceptions do we need to break to get us there? So I think for me, the first thing really is all about vision. What is that fourth wave? What is it that we want to accomplish? We've accomplished the third wave with a combination of Snow Crash, Diamond Age, Neuromancer, those views of cyberspace. And then also on the AR side, Mark Weiser. How many people know Mark Weiser? How many people have heard about ubiquitous computing or pervasive computing? He coined both of those words in his work. And that's actually what we call AR today. And so augmented reality is really delivering on some of the promise of his work. So we really need, but what are the inspirations for that fourth wave? And to get there, we actually, even in the third wave here, we still have problems because the film industry, for example, did not take off as an industry until they could agree on how large the sprocket holes were in the film and how far space, because you could shoot a film and then show it in any theater. We still have lots and lots of confusion around that, lots of people competing for standards. So we really need, open, agreed on standards in order to lay that groundwork for the next wave.
Yeah.
It's great. And I think I see those standards as wide, not just in XR, avatars, for instance. If we want a standard between avatars for NFTs to be able to be sold and then traded beyond games, there needs to be a standard on how the bone structure works, on how the material structure works, on what kind of shaders are being used, on all these kind of things. And then it goes back to the same thing. It's like, creating that universal USB drive that everything uses, right? And having everything share. I see a big piece of that, the crest of that fourth wave of VR being actual mass adoption that we're looking for, right? As developers, we yearn for it, for mass adoption, because that means there's enough people to actually buy the content you're creating. Now, when you're creating stuff for Vision Pro or Magic Leap or a prototype headset, it can sometimes be daunting as a developer because, I'm going to get tens of downloads, you know what I mean? And that can be a little rough, but it's also pretty awesome whenever you get that sack of cash after 1 month and you can move on to the next project. And so there's pros and cons to building, to being, muscle for hire. So I definitely wouldn't discourage by doing it because that's what Chicken Waffle did as we grew and started building our own internal content. We continued to kind of juggle chainsaws as we built content for other companies like.
The original iPhone only sold like 7 million, sub 10 million units that first year.
Yeah. I just got an amazing talk with Palmer. Like anybody go to that one. It was phenomenal.
I was just about to bring up
phenomenal
Palmer, yeah.
talk. Always a pleasure to listen to Palmer talk and poke fun at other billionaires. It was interesting the way he was approaching some of these things. Like one of the things he said was a large part of designing for the future of XR is if you don't pay attention to what the mistakes have already been made, you will make the same mistakes. But if you pay attention very closely to the mistakes that have already been made, you get to make brand new mistakes. And it's an interesting way of thinking because that's where innovation comes from. That failure is what drives game developers. It's the unique piece of all of you in the audience that is, honestly, we're not normal. Like this is not a normal kind of job where you can adhere to failure and failure and failure. And sometimes it's failure that's not even your fault. It's just Unity or Meta updated the tool set and now your stuff it was working 2 weeks ago and now it's broken, And so you're churning through these problems and going there, and it goes back to that standard of like, there needs to be a standard on how things are updated maybe in the tools. There needs to be a standard on how the hardware is being distributed, costs, all these things,
Yeah, and and then also thinking about like in terms of like what is that fourth wave? We have gotten used to, PBR, right? Physics-based rendering for visuals. Well, we now have Gaussian splats. We've got photogrammetry. We are almost getting, Niantic had a great announcement and some great demos. We're getting almost all the tool sets now have this sort of real-time 3D engine editor, right? So that all of these tools are getting that layer of spatiality to them. So that's going to be part of the wiring of the plumbing that we need to get to that next generation.
Yeah, it's wild to even think about.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, going off of, we just got done watching Palmer's talk, and that was my first time. I mean, we all know who he is, right? Changed everyone's lives in a way, if you believe it. But just one of the big things that I love that he was talking about is like, he's like, hey, like, I have all these old headsets, but like, I still want to keep using them, and yet I still want to keep making new things, and kind of remembering like the old technology is still good enough. And then just like, again, like having standards of like updates, like can we still get software updates that are new, that are still tied to old headsets? One of the coolest things, so I personally, I'm like obsessed with hand tracking, and anything hand tracking related, I am on board. It makes my life easier, makes my clients easier. They don't want to mess with these controllers. But we still have a long ways with hand tracking, right? But yet we do see some great technology. Like I just discovered Tap, which is a vendor out on the expo floor, and they were doing hand tracking, and I asked them, like, I have an old, what used to be called InReal, now they're XReal. I have that thing collecting dust. Like, can I use your software and your technologies with this headset that is just collecting dust? And they're like, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, this is really nice, again, having the standards of updates, but like also remembering like there's still so many headsets out there that we should still be using, and I really like that Palmer made that known.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we should also notice that all three of us are engineers, just to be clear, like what's the talent that's on the on the thing. So we are all, definitely all nerds.
Yeah, well, and I think that's an interesting thing. Like show of hands, for instance, designers in the room, right? Engineers. Who is both, actually? You have to be both, right? I mean, it's inevitable that if you're designing, you end up having to think about the engineering, the scripting side of things, in the very least, how it's going to work. Maybe you have somebody at your studio that helps you with that. Maybe you lean on them because they're there. But you're still formulating how it's going to work, that it needs to work, maybe how to speak to them when you get them to take their headphones off. Will you be able to speak to people on how this works? And in the same sense as if you're an engineer, you can't just gray box everything, right? You have to have that focus of, well, it needs to end up being polished. And early on, in your experimentation, you might keep it as a gray box because then the art doesn't get in the way. But there's that saying that the last 10% takes 90% of the time. And that's because all that art's in the way, right? You go to change one thing and it messes up all the other stuff, the light maps, the whatever.
Are you just blaming the artists?
Well, that's usually me too. So I wear a lot of hats,
The code also is in that 90%.
Well, and so for instance, we had a game that we built out, Baby Hands 2, Grandma's House, we're working on. And we had AWE in 2019, yeah, right before the pandemic. If anybody was here in 2019 and saw our mega booth out in the playground, it was insane. We had like a 60-foot long booth with truss systems and black lights and 36 rifts and all kinds of crazy stuff, and multiplayer Baby Hands daycare arenas and just zaniness, And as we were pushing for it, and we prototyped and pushed. And then it kind of took a back burner. We launched this game, Shadow of Valhalla, recently. It's like a physics-based Viking combat game. And so we had shifted gears and focuses, and now we came back recently to Baby Hands 2. And the amount of work that it took to pull the old VR tools out of it and put new ones in and fix the things that weren't, updated. It was just an astronomical Herculean task to build this up. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by awesome people because it makes my life a lot easier to
Well, I think that's an interesting thing about like what's changing for the fourth wave of VR in that we traditionally think of art separate from code in a sense, in that you have a pipeline that's an art pipeline, you have a pipeline that is, code. Well, the visuals are now getting more real-time generated, all right? There's more like procedural stuff, there's more the way in which we see, again, like Gaussian splats are rendered in a very interesting way, real time. And then we're also getting the word we haven't mentioned yet, which is AI. And so we're getting, AI in multiple layers of what creates interactive experiences. And so for us with White Rabbit, for episode 1, it's in fully enclosed VR. So it's a mystery game about a magician whose magic one day suddenly works and the rabbit disappears, wearing a diamond bracelet, so everyone wants to follow the White Rabbit. And that's in full VR. So I take you to a cafe in Paris in 1889. But in the episode 2, with Vision OS 2 on the Apple Vision Pro launching later this year, we're actually going to be able to launch episode 2, which is basically the fabulous steel diamond necklace has been stolen in the middle of a gala at the British Museum, and I turn your room into a Victorian mansion. So the new technology we're going to need to make that happen is the lovely hover states and some other great things in Vision OS 2, but also we're going to need semantic understanding, and that's on every platform. So every platform is getting 3D editing tools. The other thing every platform is doing is they're also getting, well, how can we detect the real world? If you go back to ubiquitous computing or pervasive computing, we need that. And for us, we need not only the mesh, not only the segmentation dividing things, but we also need really detailed tagging. So imagine this mystery where it recognizes a tag to a real plate of food. And then I can, as the game, place a virtual vial of poison next to it. Or I spot a real world fireplace, and then as the game, I put a bent poker into that real world fireplace. That interplay, especially for games, is going to be between the real world and the game experience, the virtual. It'll blend all together and will really start to deliver what many of us got excited with the original Google Tango back in the day.
I was about to say, I can't even imagine what your application looks like today. Talking about when I first met you, VR LA, I mean, I gotta say it was like the Gear.
It was Gear VR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gear VR.
Gear VR.
I mean,
Which
this
has
is before
1K
Oculus
graphics,
Go.
yeah.
Right. And I was already like, whoa, this is amazing. How do I do this? So I'm like, oh, I'm now gonna check out her stuff on this Exo4 and AWE. And it's like, again, like I can't even imagine. And the fact that now we can go from like virtual reality to now like a mixed reality world, and it's with ease. I mean, if you design it right, it's very easy to go from one to another. So I haven't actually made anything totally mixed reality yet. I've been staying kind of in VR land with Spec Theory because Air Force. And then, with the art space, AR is huge. A lot of my clients are non-technical people. And so they want to be able to still see the physical space. And AR is like still perfect for art galleries and people that are new to technology. But educating people and showing more mixed reality experiences like that, like I'm really excited for whenever that comes up.
It's really like there's 3 stages to get to the fourth wave of XR, especially on the ER, on the AR side, not the ER. ER is the one R we don't want.
That's where you end up.
But stage
up.
one is really all about, it's kind of like it's the Princess Leia hologram. So it's Pokemon Go, it's putting a virtual world item, as a projection in the world in believable fashion. Stage 2 for AR is really more Star Wars chess. So the game, the game board. So a virtual game board and all of the interaction. And this can also be true with a model in architecture or repairing a jet engine, something like that.
That's right, yeah.
And then, but then stage 3, which is what we're going to need for this fourth wave of XR, is we really need to, is really what we're building with scene understanding and being able to identify items and respond. It'll have this dialogue between the game and that real world. And it's true for
I
enterprise
think
as well.
it's cool too when you play a game that really does that, that uses your world. It's fun. It's really neat because it brings your world that's otherwise just a friggin' wall or your
It's
sofa.
magic.
It brings it is. It is very much like magic. We just launched a game called Steel Core that was part of the Meta grant development program. Like basically threw a stack of cash at us to make XR, make MR, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, okay, I like money, you know, so we got some
like money
more, you
too.
know, and so
What's money?
then they said
No,
no, but you know, so but what we built was this. It was kind of like remember that movie Real Steel with Hugh Jackman meets Rock'em Sock'em Robots with about a 3-foot mech that you could kind of puppet around, and then there was enemy drones smashing through your walls in your apartment or something, and you could see the post-apocalyptic wasteland in the background, and the walls were crumbling down, and then huge enemies came, and just swarms of snaking enemies, just really wild, over the top. And your meta avatar was like this tall inside the mech, you know, like cheering around, and so that was wild, you know, to kind of do that, and at the same time, you know, build holograms and stuff. But AR is a big piece, you know, Eighth Wall, what they're doing and with Niantic and stuff, and just really developing these tools. So I think, you know,
It's really cool, speaking of money, really cool that it's going free, right? Some of the free,
Yeah.
more free layer tiers is
Yeah.
really helpful. And then we were chatting earlier about the other impediment, the other obstacle to getting to the fourth wave of XR is financing, financial models, business models. The ways in which an artist or you're both doing artists and then really hardcore training with the Air Force.
Exactly. And real quick, I mean, we talk about gaming. I have never built really a game in my entire life, but most of everything I build so far, besides getting into the tech art world, has been training. And I was just thinking about that. I'm like, well, if we think about a lot of the training simulations I've built with various clients, utility companies. One of my favorite projects was Goodwill, training people on how to better their interview skills so they can stay out of jail. Huge. Where does mixed reality now come into some of the training simulations that we're building today? And it's right now, I'm like, with spec theory, we're very, very VR only. That's just what the standard is. That's what the US Air Force is saying, like VR. But I've also done AR as well, and utility corporations, and how are we like rebuilding engines and whatnot. But then I'm like, where is mixed reality coming in? And that's going to be something like we have to push and we have to educate. Whereas gaming's, in my opinion, like killing it with mixed reality.
Right.
But now I start to think well, what's going on in training? Because I don't do gaming, I do training. So I'm like, what's going on over there? Like, how do we bring an MR over there?
Well, and then if we want to think about, again, what this fourth wave of XR might be like, it's also the hardware, so business models, and then also, the glasses that are sunglasses. They're VR as well as AR, smart glasses. They are the 3D display on your laptop. Everyone will have one, and without glasses, you'll just be able to see that. They'll have 3D panels and 3D rooms, right, that you can go, and it's very much like Ray Bradbury's story, The Veldt, which has the nursery. And you walk into the nursery, and you say, African savannah with lions. And then being a Ray Bradbury story, you can kind of imagine where that goes.
Yeah.
But we're almost there, because with AI, we can able to understand those speech to prompt. We are almost there, but I think we are also almost out
we
of time.
are. Thank you so much for your attention. It was an honor.
Do we have
to
time for a
present to
question
you.
or no?
We're pretty much out of time, but I'll tell you what, we'll get off the stage, and if you have any questions, please come and talk to us, and then we'll meander out the door there if you want to tackle us and ask us more about money or mistakes we've made.
Yeah, I think we're all
Let's give our panel a big round of applause.